What if everything you thought you knew about success was wrong? My guest today, Emily Tisch Sussman, had a fast-paced, high-profile political career until she walked away to raise 3 kids in 4 years. But instead of losing momentum, she gained something even more valuable: clarity. Today, she's going to share how to pivot without fear, redefine success on your own terms, and build a life that actually works for you. Emily, welcome to Superhuman Selling. I am so excited to dive in with you today. And like we were talking about in the pre-chat, I mean, raising 3 kids, like 3 kids under 4, we're about to do 3 kids under 5. And when I read your story, I thought, okay, this is a breath of fresh air. If this woman can do it, there's hope. I think we can do it too. Welcome to the show. We are so excited to have you. I'm so excited to have you and to dive in.
Thank you so much for having me, Elyse, and good luck. It's crazy.
Spoken like a woman who knows, right? Well, I know that you have an incredible career. You've had an incredible career. And I'll let you share, obviously, more of your background and your story today. But I know that you're the executive producer of highly, highly popular show, She Pivots, which is an award-winning show as well, right? Davy and Shorty award-winning series, which is phenomenal. You had a very high-level political profession, right? And turned success and fulfillment advocate. And really what I understand in you, I'm excited to dive in, is that your mission is helping others redefine success and create it on their own terms. So I'd love to hear, just even before we dive into your journey, what did success used to mean for you? And what was the moment when you realized that you needed to redefine it?
Great question. So I had a pretty standard understanding of success. Like, it was titles, it was compensation, it was where my office was. As now in my life, that feels ridiculous. But, like if you had an interior window or an exterior window, like that was like all the talk, like that was a pretty big, it was head count. How many staff did I had under me? What meetings was I in? And I cared about those things a lot. And I hustled really hard to be accomplished in that field. And I found it. That's what part of what made it really difficult for me to walk away is that I had a very professional version of success. Like, I remember, it's going way back, but this really sticks with me. Nicole Wallace, who's now an MSNBC anchor, was the press secretary in George Bush's White House. And she left after about a year. And she said she was leaving for personal reasons. And it was just when I was in college and coming into my career. And I remember thinking to myself, who would walk away from that job? That's an amazing job. Like, who would ever leave being the White House press secretary? Like, you've made it. And that really stuck with me. Like, I would never have made a professional decision for a personal reason. All I knew was hustle and accomplish. And I was able to do it. So my job was as a political strategist on federal strategy in D.C. My training is as a lawyer. And I was able to work on some of the landmark legislation of the Obama administration. I was one of the lead lobbyists on the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I worked on defending the Affordable Care Act. I worked on DACA. And real people benefited from the legislation. So there was no sense that I should be putting anything above that, right? Like, that was paramount to have impact, like real impact, but also for myself, for my own sense of self-worth, that I knew that I accomplished these things. I ran the only campaign that defeated the NRA in 2 decades, and I basically just outworked them. And I had a lot of self-esteem attached to that. I did have self-confidence around that. I think one of the driving factors for me was that I came from a family in New York that was well-known, and everyone associated me with my family. And so I had sort of an empty sense of self-worth on my own because people didn't necessarily know things about me or want to get to know me. They only associated me with my family. So I left New York, went to Washington, and went out to make a name for myself. And I always took the hardest job because I wanted to make sure that I was accomplishing it on my own, and I was really getting it on my own. Part of that is that I became an on-air commentator, so on cable news. Sometimes I was on Fox every day. And part of what drove me was that I knew that nobody could say I didn't earn that. Like, you saw me on live TV beating up the people on the other side, like there was, you couldn't say I didn't earn it. And so I really had my identity and my self-worth attached to my professional accomplishments. I got pregnant a month after I got married. I was not ready. I did not always want to be a parent at all. Like, I really did not like kids. I did not like babies. I didn't see any value to having them. Like, I just wanted to be accomplished. And everyone I knew had, including my own family members, had taken about a year to get pregnant after they had gone off birth control. So I was like, oh, well, I'll give myself a year to think about it. And I got pregnant immediately. And was very depressed and was pushing through my job and was pushing myself physically. Even when I had the baby, I didn't feel a connection to the baby. I was like, oh, this is supposed to be that moment where I'm like, oh, everything kicks in and now I feel connected to you. And I didn't. I just resented him. And apparently I'm the most fertile person on earth, because when he was 8 months old, I got pregnant again. And I thought this could not be happening to me. So I had 2 kids in 18 months. That was the beginning of the Trump administration, which also meant that my job changed pace very quickly because the pace of the administration picked up. So at the end of that second maternity leave, when I was staring down, going back and leading my team in rapid response, because it's part of what we did, what that meant was that as the Trump administration would come out with new policies, my team would figure out how do we respond and organize the policy experts to come up with a substantive response, because that was a point in which we thought policy mattered. But I couldn't keep up with the pace. And at the time, I thought that I have to leave because I can't handle it, because I can't think about taking care of these 2 babies and also running my team. In retrospect, now I look back and I also realized that I was embarrassed that most of the people that I worked with knew me when I had no kids, and they knew me as a total hustler who would do anything and have no boundaries. And I didn't know how to manage the boundaries. And so I was too embarrassed to be working with people that knew this different version of me when I couldn't even figure out this new version of me. So I left that job, started doing some consulting, and then I had a 3rd kid in 3 years. Thought that that was going into the 2020 presidential primary. I was consulting on one of the presidential candidates going into the Iowa caucus, and I thought that I would be ready for the primary. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be this girl boss and, try to figure out a way to consult onto the presidential. And then 3 weeks after I had the baby, we went into a global lockdown. So I was at home with a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, and 3-week-old, basically none of whom I felt connected to, all of whom I was resentful for. The only thing that made me feel like me was working, and that work was unavailable. And I lost myself. Like, I totally lost my identity. I had no sense of self-worth. I didn't know who I was. All I could do was keep these kids alive, barely. And also, it was predicated on the fact that I would have childcare. And that evaporated too. And so it really cut me down to something that I didn't think I was good at, something I didn't know how to access, but I had no other choices. So actually, when you introduced me and you said that I left my career to take care of 3 kids, it was not willingly. Like, I really feel that part of what the identity loss for me was that I was so angry about it, because nothing about the kids gave me any pride or happiness. I didn't think I was good at it. I didn't feel connected to it. The thing that I was good at was working. I wanted to be working, and I couldn't. And just really angry for a long time. And then once my kids each hit like 2, I started feeling more connected and feeling interested. And now my kids now are 8, 7, and 6. And although that was incredibly difficult time, I do feel like I built my relationship with each of them individually. Like, I didn't follow anybody else's path of how to be a parent. And so now I have very individual relationships with each of my kids, and I truly enjoy spending time with them. And I'm much less resentful because I have found a way to pivot and build a media company out of this and build an investment portfolio. And I'm sure we'll talk more about all of those things. But now I define success by the fact that I can be present with each kid. I can spend meaningful time with them, and I can do work that feels meaningful to me at the same time. But, I don't have a title. I don't have like compensation pay scale. I have no office. We're sitting in a closet in my house right now that I've turned into a recording studio. I spend most of the time working out of my bedroom. Like those things would have horrified the working me, like the pre-kid working me. But my definition of success is different right now because I've redefined what success means for myself, and so I'm able to find happiness in a different way in it.
If today's episode is resonating with you and you're ready to take bold steps towards a business and life that feel more aligned, I want to invite you to come join me inside the 10K Club, where we make success feel effortless. Apply now at ElyseArcher.com/10K Club. I love what you shared, and I appreciate how transparently you shared, because I have this conversation often with either my clients or other girlfriends who are entrepreneurs or who run businesses. And I think every woman is wired differently. And I have so many girlfriends, and we've got so many women in the community where it's like they always knew they wanted to be a mom. They knew that was their purpose. And so it felt very natural and aligned for them. I love being a mom, and I resonate with everything that you shared, because my vision, my path for so long in my life was completely about career. And so becoming a mom didn't feel natural. And there were parts of it that felt exactly to your point, where my identity, my self-concept was really challenged. And so much of my self-worth, just like your story, was wrapped up in career and accomplishment and achievement. So I'm curious for you, I think a lot of women feel trapped by the very like traditional definitions of success. How did you, it sounds like you almost had to create a new identity along the way when suddenly everything you thought was going to be your identity, your career, your success mechanisms, when that was kind of stripped away. How did you start to do that? And what are your thoughts on why so many women do feel trapped by the traditional definitions of success?
I definitely had to create a new identity, because the thing that I was identified as, even to myself, was literally unavailable to me. Like there was nothing for me to draw from. So the way that I started to think about it was that I knew that the way that I was impactful was legislative change. I had a very clear lane in which I worked. And I started to think, well, what if I move that a little bit? Like, what if I start to think about it as culture change? I can't be the only person who's felt this way. I can't be the only person who's gone through it. I need advice. Like I need advice. And I want to hear not just somebody who went through, like, I don't want to hear like mommy advice, because actually that doesn't resonate with me. I didn't want this. I don't feel connected to it. I need to hear something actually way worse, which is sort of why we all watch murder docuseries, right? Like we all kind of need to hear like the worst version to then feel a little bit okay about it. And so I spent about a year coming up with both the concept for the podcast, She Pivots, thinking about what my role would be, thinking about who I would work with, how I would position it, how I would build a model for it. Because I ended up building a full media company behind it. I had a political podcast before and worked with a contractor, and it really didn't work for me. And I was doing all the work anyway. I mean, I needed them to do my first show, because it's so scary to put yourself out there into the world and be like, I am the one you should listen to. And here is the way that I will structure this. Like, you don't know. I didn't know. So, for that, I needed them. But having done the show with this company, I thought, you know what? I can build this myself. I'm going to build all of it myself. So that did take me about a year. And so it gave me time to be thinking, like turning this over in my head. Like, am I okay with this new identity? Am I okay with admitting that I have put my kids first in some ways, something that I used to totally scoff at as like a 30-year-old lawyer? Am I okay admitting that out loud? And actually, the first time I was so nervous to put it out into the world. And so I sent an email, created an email list, all my contacts, all my political contacts, all my business contacts, and said, I'm creating this podcast, and it's going to be targeted at culture change, specifically interviewing people who have changed their professional lives for a personal reason. I'm going to try to bridge the personal and professional. I'm going to blow open this idea of the personal piece and show how it's impacted the professional. And I'm admitting that I failed as a political person, because you could never admit in politics that you're struggling or that you failed, because no one would hire you again. And I'm admitting it, and this is basically acknowledging that I'm out of the game. And here it is to the world. Here is my new podcast, Pivot. And within days, I got a cease and desist order from Vox Media that I had violated their trademark for the title Pivot, that owns New York Magazine and therefore owns Kara Swisher's Pivot. And I was like, well, what a failure to launch. I have established my new identity. I put it out there into the world and I botched it. And so we went back and forth. It took maybe 6 weeks, and we ended up coming to an agreement that I would change my title to She Pivots and they would not sue me for it. And I thought, okay, the relaunch, here it comes. I'm She Pivots. And probably a week or two later, a very well-known magazine editor and influencer did this whole Instagram live about how they're creating a new column essentially called She Pivots. Interviewing, and I was like, oh my God, I cannot get this right. And nobody wants my new identity, least of all me. Like, what I actually want to be doing is political, but I'm trying to convince myself that I want to be doing this. I had this like variety of failures to launch as I went through it. And so, I mean, that certainly gave me some time to get comfortable with my new identity.
Well, it's so funny. I was talking with a client about this yesterday who was launching a new business, and he was running into just all sorts of like really, they felt very big, unexpected obstacles. And I've learned in my career, and I'm curious if this is your perspective too, when we're really on to something, a lot of times there can be a lot of what I would call contrast at the beginning. Like, you launch the show, you get of all places, you get a cease and desist from Fox, right? And I think these. Yeah, exactly.
With Vox Media owns New York.
Sorry, Vox Media.
Yes.
Thank you.
Fox Media does not care about me. I do not infringe upon their audience in any way.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
But with that too, I think we get these moments to self-define along the way and say, okay, am I really committed to this or not? But when we use those as moments to self-define, then we end up usually building something really big and impactful. But I have yet to hear a story of someone who's built something amazing where they didn't run into some pretty big challenges along the way. I just think it goes with the territory.
Well, I think if you're doing something big, you have to have challenges, and it has to be part of your story. And I think that has to be part of your mindset, that it's not concerning when challenges come up. It's part of the journey. And it does help you figure out what your true core is and what you're actually working towards. I mean, I had a million different versions of, is it a podcast? Is it a show? Is it a conference? Is it, is it a vlog? Like, I had a million different versions of it. And it did help me decide, am I really committed to this? The first season, I did 10 episodes because I thought, I want to see if I really like this and if I can really pull this off. And so it was one capsule of 10 episodes. And that felt right. And I learned a lot of lessons from it. And I changed some things, and I moved. But it has to feel like all part of the journey to get to it. I can't be too precious about any one thing. Even the title of this trademark infringement that I got into is that they wanted me to drop the word pivot. My lawyer kept saying, well, it's too complicated to drop the word pivot. And I was like, you know what? It's my one non-negotiable. I cannot drop. My lawyer gave me like 50 terms that I could use. And I was like, here's the problem with all 50. None of them are pivot. And at the time, now this feels like, ages ago, like 3 years ago. Like, now people are talking about this much more. But it was much more of a white space that people weren't talking about pivoting as much. It was still sort of the edge of the girl boss era. Like, we can do it all. And so people weren't talking about integrating the personal and professional as much. So I quickly realized that I was doing both, creating the narrative and putting myself in it. So, every conference that I applied to speak at, I had to say, this is a reason that people are talking about this, and I am the one to talk about it. Like, I had to do both at the same time. I had gone, even before I decided to create the show, part of this like long process is, or I guess when I was creating it, I was deciding, I felt like I really needed a media partner to legitimize myself. because everyone knew me as news. So I went to every talent agency, everyone. I had a meeting with every single talent agency. And I said, here's my concept. Here's who I am. Love to hear your thoughts. And every single one of them said, we don't know what to do with you. We like you as a person. We'd put you in our news division, but you're not looking for a news show. You're not an influencer. So at that point, they barely had like influencer categories. Now they do. We don't know what to do with you. So why don't you go ahead and create the show and call us when you're more established and you can figure out where you work in the agency. And nobody would work with me. And now I think to myself, well, why would I work with them? Because I created it myself. So I don't actually need them anymore. And in fact, I don't want to work with somebody who's not going to be on this ride with me.
There is a big shift that happens when we stop seeking the external validation and we learn to validate ourselves. And I think that's when not just women, but men, but obviously a lot of the work I do is with women. You do a lot of work with women too. Like that's when we step into our true power, is when we realize, okay, maybe I don't need the traditional publisher. I don't need the media agency. I don't need this person or that person to validate me, because my own experience is like the world will only validate you to the level that you validate yourself. They're just going to mirror back to you what you're thinking about yourself. So I love how you said, okay, I'm going to figure this thing out on my own. And what a good thing it was that you did, because you have ownership and control over all the things.
Absolutely. So absolutely. And I'll give you an example in actually another space that just happened yesterday, that when you every time you go into a new space, it's exciting and it's not a straight path, right? Like you're going to have to get feedback. You're going to have to adjust your positioning. You're going to have to be thinking about things differently, which is part of the excitement. I mean, that's part of what I love about, building something new, creating something new. I designed campaigns in my professional life. So now I'm thinking about doing that in different spaces now. So I'm taking in, we haven't talked about this, but part of my pivot now is that we co-own the women's soccer team in New York. My sister is the president of Gotham FC, the women's soccer team in New York. She's had her own pivot. You can find her background on the She Pivots feed. It's super interesting. But so I spend a lot of time working on marketing for our players, for the team, just finding ways to add value. And I really want to get the players into this high profile thing. Not something I have space in, but I networked around. I found a way. I got them a meeting and I thought, okay, well, if we're going into this meeting next week and we better be prepared. So in my mind, I was thinking about preparing for this meeting the way I would have prepared for a lobby meeting, like with the senator. You need to have this preparation, you need to have paper, you need to have a hard ask, that's how I would structure it. And I made sure that I asked someone I knew who was connected to this thing, but not like the person I'm making the ask of, to be like, can you do a background meeting with me first? So I did a background meeting with her. I don't know her super well. She is very harsh. And so I kept spitballing ideas out. Like, this is how I would have prepared for the meeting in my mind. How do you feel about this? And I'd say half of the things, she was like, that is ridiculous and offensive. Do not do that. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm so happy that we are having this conversation now instead of in the room with the players, like at this high stakes thing. And afterwards, I got off the call and I was like, somebody else may have went and cried after that meeting. But I just thought, great. Like, I'm so happy that I got that feedback now. And actually, as she kept giving the feedback to me, I started thinking, well, she's given me really honest answers. So let me actually think of more things that I can throw off her. Like, let me think of more wild ideas of how we could prepare for this meeting or what we could talk about so that I get the reaction out of her. And I know if it's a total hit, or it sounds like most of my ideas are total misses. So let's pressure test that right now in this safe space. And I don't take it personally. It has nothing to do with me. I'm learning about their industry.
Yeah. And I think it's that mindset that we have to have, right? To be able to pivot, to be able to be open to say, oh my gosh, this may be the worst idea in the world. Maybe it's the best. I don't know, but I'm open, and to be able to receive that input and feedback from people in a way that others might take as harsh or
yeah, totally. Well, actually, it's actually the reason I brought that up is because in answer to an earlier question you asked about how, women feel nervous about pivoting. And one of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give to people is think about what level conversations you're having and what conversations you're having with who. So I hear a lot from moms who stepped away from their previous career and want to get back into the workforce, maybe in the same industry, but more likely in a different one. And they feel like they have no skills. You are wrong. You have skills. You have tons of them. You may not know the language and the calendar of the industry you're trying to get into, and that's fine. That you can learn. But you have a ton of transferable skills. So I'd say for all of those conversations that you are ready to start thinking about, make sure that you have two buckets of them. One, talk to your close friends who really know you or people you've worked with before and say, what are my skills and what language can I give them in a professional setting? Am I a good project manager? Am I detail oriented? Am I a good time manager? Am I good outwardly facing, client facing? Right, like language you may not know to give to those skills that you have. And then look at a second bucket of people you may be loosely connected to who work in the industry you want to go into, and say, can you teach me the language of your industry and the calendar of your industry so that when you are ready to call in the favor and meet with someone, relatively mid to high level in the industry you want to go into, you are going in prepared. I'll give you another example of a time that I really botched that one. When I launched She Pivots, I thought, God, I can only get in coverage in political. I'm dying to try to get into lifestyle kind of press or, maybe tangentially fashion press. So I launched a fashion partnership with the launch of the show so that I could try to get into this fashion category and people could see me differently than just a political talking head. So we put all this effort into it. We launched it. We launched it the week of New York Fashion Week. What do fashion press not care about during New York Fashion Week? Anything other than New York Fashion Week. Like, I did not know the calendar of the industry that I was trying to get into. And so that launch was just a total waste of time, basically, because I hadn't done my homework in that sense.
Yeah. It's helpful, though, for people to hear this because, again, when you've been at it long enough, you have so many things that you've done and you look back and you're like, oh, okay, that one didn't work. But it's what did I learn and again, to use your word, how am I going to pivot moving forward? So I love this. I want to make sure we're going to do a quick little mini game here. I want to make sure that we have time to do this. I think this will be fun before you tell everyone where they can connect with you and where they can learn more about your work and what you do. So I'm going to give you just a couple of quick scenarios where a famous figure decides to make a pivot. And you've worked with a lot of famous figures, so I think this will be fun to get your input on this. So tell us if you think they should go for it or if they should stay in their lane and why. And we'll do about 30 seconds per scenario if you can. So,
okay.
This first one would make me very sad, but let's say that Beyonce quits music to become a full-time business mogul. Is that a brilliant move or a huge mistake?
She still has too much music left to do. Don't do it, girl. Stick with it. There's still so much more in you, and you create new categories every time you enter the arena. So keep going. You can do both. Staff out on the business side. Only you can make your music.
I love it. Okay, let's say Taylor Swift shifts to politics and runs for office. Is she going to be the future president, or is this a complete disaster waiting to happen?
This is a genius move. She has a very dedicated audience, and she actually connects with them authentically. And so she could flip her audience from music, lifestyle to political. Do it.
I love your perspective on that. I thought you were going to say no. That's awesome. Okay, final one. Serena Williams launches a wellness empire and quits all sports. So can she dominate in business like she did in tennis?
She's actually basically already done this, and she's a genius. And so, yes, she can do anything she wants to do. She's already an incredibly savvy investor. We actually invest alongside in some sports with her and their company. They are incredibly savvy. So, yes, dominate the new industry, lady. I love it.
I love that so much. That was so fun. And you got it in about 30 seconds. So
that's hard for me. It was really hard. That's when you said the 30 seconds at the outset, that gave me a mindset that I have to answer fast.
So final words of encouragement, and then we will I'll have you tell everyone where to connect with you further, Emily. But if someone is listening to this and you would say they're scared to pivot, right? They have that calling, they know it's time, but they're scared to pivot. What's the first thing that you would encourage them to do?
Well, I think of pivoting as there being like a 3-point triangle of things that you should do. So one is figure out what is your North Star. Like, what is the thing you actually want? Because what I hear is what usually people come to me and they say, oh, I have been in finance, but now I want to have a knitting Etsy store. And I'm like, great. What is it about the knitting Etsy store that you want, right? Like, is it that you want to work on your own? Is that you want to have a flexible schedule? Is that you want to do something with your hands? Like, figure out what is the thing that you are trying to get to. And the flip side of that is what is the thing you are trying to let go of? And then design around that and be flexible. It's going to change, right? Like I didn't know if I was going to be creating a forum, right? Like be flexible about what it might be. The second thing is going to your kitchen cabinet, creating that cabinet that I had talked about before, you know, the people that know your skills and then the people that know your industry. So really use that. And the third, I would say, is be realistic about your bandwidth. Your bandwidth is the most important thing that you have, and you have to be realistic about it. Are you a stay-at-home mom right now that has time on their hands when your kids are in school to have meetings? That's great. Are you working 10 hours a day and you don't have that kind of energy? Then think about yourself on a longer timeline to be realistic. Otherwise, you're going to spend all the time beating yourself up at the fact that you didn't move fast enough considering someone else's timeline. But like I couldn't have done any of this when my kids were under 3 because it was crazy and I had no brain bandwidth at all. So, but I spent a lot of time beating myself up about not being faster because I felt like I wanted to get back into the working arena. But, you know, I was able to be okay at certain points with the fact that it took me a little bit longer, that was my phase of life. And now I've been able to move into a different phase of life because my youngest is in pre-K and in school all day.
Yeah. It's permission to be where you are, to give yourself some grace, which I think for all of us, myself included, is something we get to work on. But is one of like the biggest gifts that we can give ourselves as well. So I loved this conversation. You're so fun to talk to. I know people are going to want to dive into your work, into your podcast. So if you want to take a minute, Emily, and just share more about how our listeners can connect with you and go deeper into what you're doing, that would be amazing.
Yeah, so follow She Pivots the podcast on Instagram, and you can get our weekly episode comes out every Wednesday morning. You can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And also through our website on She Pivots, you can get our newsletter where I do a little bit of a deeper dive every week into things that I'm looking at, my perspective on why I choose to have the guests on that we do, the relationship I have to them, and also following some of the other investments that I'm working on.
Amazing. Thank you again. This was so fun. And I think your unapologetic energy and just leading by example with what you're doing is incredibly inspiring. I mean, to me, right, as a fellow mom of 3 who's also building her business, and to so many of our listeners. So thank you. And I so appreciate your time. To you, my listener, I want to remind you to trust yourself on your path to success. Your desires are green lights leading you and everyone around you to a brighter future. I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.